Earlier this year, I was invited to test Thread Theory's Bamberton Shorts pattern. The pattern instructions are the same for both the men's and women's version, so instead of testing a pair of shorts for myself, I decided to sew a muslin for my wife. In this video, you'll see how I used the final released version of the pattern to make her a pair of shorts out of seafoam blue cotton linen from start to finish. You can skip ahead using the video chapters, speed up the video, or even slow it down if it's helpful. Here's how I made these shorts for my wife. I only made a couple of changes compared to the released pattern, the first change being the back pockets. The original pattern includes an option for back welt pockets as well as for square patch pockets with flaps. After seeing the samples I made of both options, my wife preferred to have plain patch pockets without flaps, so I used the patch pockets from Thread Theory's Eastwood Pajamas pattern instead. I've sewn numerous pairs of Eastwood pajamas, so I already had a fold template that I made for pressing the patch pockets. After trimming the seam allowances, I gave the pockets one final quick pressing to make sure they laid as flat as possible. Normally I add bar tacks to the top corners of my patch pockets, but for these shorts I thought I'd just try sewing a triangle at the top instead. I had to do a little bit of measuring and marking to align these new pockets with the existing pattern, but for the most part it was a pretty simple swap. Sometimes I use wash-away Wonder Tape to baste patch pockets in place, but for these shorts it was simple enough to just use pins to hold them in place. I used a compensating presser foot to edge stitch the pocket in place. And I repeated the same sewing process a second time for the second patch pocket. After a quick press of the back pockets, I proceeded with sewing the seat seam. Normally, I would use my pressing ham to press the seat seam, so I'm not sure why I didn't use it here, but it's still possible to press it flat without one. With the seat seam top stitched and pressed, I continued with sewing the front seam and mock fly. Sorry, the video froze here for a bit, but as I'm serging it in the next step, you can see that it's just a simple seam sewn with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I clipped the curve just 3/8 of an inch to make it easier to serge, but that much gets cut off by the serger anyways, so the final seam is still fully intact with no cut. Again, I should have used my pressing ham to press the front seam. For the front/pockets, I didn't cut out the pattern piece for the front pocket facing since I was using the same fabric for the pockets as the rest of the shorts. After grading one of the seam allowances with scissors, I realized I could get cleaner, more accurate cut lines if I used a rotary cutter and ruler instead. I used a compensating presser foot when understitching the pocket pegs. And I used a compensating presser foot again when top stitching the pockets in place along the edge. Since the bottom of the serged pockets wouldn't get sewn into another seam, I weaved the serger thread tails back into the seams and applied a drop of fray check to the corners before basting the pockets in place. Normally I add bar tacks to the edges of slash pocket openings, but I skipped the bar tacks for these shorts. The side panels make these shorts very easy to sew, but it does involve a lot of repetition. As with the previous steps, I again used a compensating presser foot when top stitching the side panels along the front of the shorts. Next, with the side panels attached to the front of the shorts, I proceeded to attach one of the side panels to the back of the shorts. And finally, I attached the back of the shorts to the other side panel. Once I finished sewing the side panels, I continued by sewing the inseam. The instructions don't say to top stitch the inseam, but since I was already top stitching everything else, I figured I'd do it here too. Next, I proceeded with hemming the bottoms before attaching the waistband. I could have sewn the hems from the inside, but I decided to have a little bit of fun by challenging myself to sew the hems from the outside of the shorts. I'm using my fingers to feel for the fold of the fabric underneath and guide it to the inside left edge of the presser foot. I didn't do too bad considering I didn't use a seam guide and was sewing blind by feeling alone. I got a decently consistent 1/16 of an inch from the edge all the way around. I repeated the same sewing process for both hems. The waistband is where I deviated from the instructions the most. I cut the waistband out of a single long piece of fabric instead of two. This way, the waistband would have just a single join at the back instead of two joins at both sides of the shorts. My wife didn't want the shorts to have a drawstring, so I didn't need to sew drawstring holes either. I also used 1.5 inch elastic and modified the pattern to make that the full height of the waistband. The pattern instructions detail the process for creating a casing and joining the elastic after it's inserted into the waistband, but I joined my elastic first and skipped the casing. I marked quarter marks on the elastic, on the waistband, and on the shorts themselves. To make top stitching in the next step easier, I tack the bottom edge of the elastic to the waistband at the quarter marks. These tacks will be only barely visible from the inside of the waistband, not from the outside, and they help me to keep things aligned and prevent things from slipping in the next step. Then I created 3 rows of top stitching on the elastic waistband using a single needle chain stitch to preserve stretch. Doing this before the elastic waistband was attached to the shorts made it super easy to manage. For extra security, I tacked the end of each row of stitching to prevent the chain stitches from unraveling. I woke up early the next morning to attach the waistband to the shorts, but I must have still been sleepy. I didn't realize that I was clipping the wrong side of the waistband to the right side of the shorts. Unfortunately, I didn't realize my mistake until after I had finished serging the waistband on. I decided to leave it as is. The loopy side of the chain stitches are super tidy and even more so when they're stretched, so you have to look really close to notice it. Besides, the waistband will always be covered by my wife's shirt anyways. I used a single needle chain stitch again to top stitch the seam allowance down to the shorts. So there you have it. That's how I used Thread Theory's Bamberton Shorts pattern to make a pair of cotton linen shorts for my wife. I hope you found this video entertaining or useful to you in some way. Don't forget you can use the video chapters to go back to a section and use the controls to speed up or slow down the video if that's helpful to you. Thanks for watching.